Hello to everybody. My name is Esther from Gewahr Sein, and I'm here today with Elena from holistic.com. Hello, Elena.
Hi, Esther. Nice to be here with you.
Yeah. Thanks so much being here with me. There's so much gratitude that I can do this interview with you and that we can talk about some very special topics that could be important. And I would like to introduce you and your work and what your work is based on shortly. And then to describe which aspect I would like to focus on today, special aspect of your work. And then there's invitation there for you to fill the space that's there with your knowledge and your wisdom and your personal experience, and what's there to support the listeners on their individual way and to inspire that they can recall their abilities for transformation and healing. That's
Mm.
the intention of today. So, George, do you want to say something, Elena?
Yes, no, thank you. I think it's a beautiful intention. And I guess you wanted me to start with how did I come to do what I do today? Yes, where did it all begin? Oh, it's been a fascinating journey. So this journey for me started, I think it starts from the moment we're born. And for those of us that remember to stay curious and ask questions. So that's always been my nature as a child, is I've always been very intuitive and very curious about what is and why was it that I was feeling certain things, but sometimes the outside world or the responses, there was a discrepancy. And it led me into a path of medicine because I've always wanted, as a child, I've always imagined creating magical potions for my loved ones. I grew up in a beautiful home, very loving home with wonderful parents. And I always thought these are like my anchors, my friends. And I wanted to see, because I saw aging and I wanted to make sure that they live forever. And of course, life doesn't happen that way, but I went into the field of pharmacy because I remember as a child, I grew up in Kiev, Ukraine, walking by the pharmacies and seeing through the windows that pharmacists were mixing, to me, I thought were magical potions. And then, of course, I grew up, I have family members who are dentists and surgeons and pediatricians. And I always thought, I didn't want to go into that kind of medicine. I thought, okay, I'll create magical potions. Well, little did I know, the pharmacy world is not about magical potions nowadays. It's been absolutely hijacked. But I still went in and completed my studies with this imagination at play and curiosity. And it led me to on a very interesting path, first recognizing, especially in the United States, I live in the US, how over-medicated people are. And it got to the point when I used to work at a diabetes clinic that I've seen actually patients on 17 to 19 medications a day. This was the average for that particular clinic. And I thought, this is absolutely not the path. In 2007, I've transitioned into the work of functional medicine. I became board certified in functional. It's also called metabolic nutritional medicine. And I went to study energy medicine. And this is also somewhat an overlay of the time when I worked in a diabetes clinic. I remember asking patients if they were somehow changing their diet, if they're interested in knowing how diet influences the physical body. And they said, oh no, my doctor said it's not linked, so I don't have to change anything. And this is patients that were coming in with oxygen tanks and in wheelchairs. So there's definitely a massive breakdown in the healthcare system. I know, especially in the US, there are different ways that I would say different cultures approach health. But overall, what I've realized is there is a disconnect between body, mind, and soul connection. And this was my big awakening into something that I've always felt as a child. And I believe that most of us know this information, but somewhere down the line, we're programmed to be very linear in thinking. And as I've learned through quantum physics moving forward, time is not linear. Our bodies are not mechanical. Everything responds based on the thoughts, the emotions, the events and situations in our life. So it led me into absolutely shifting from the very linear way of practicing medicine and diving into the work of energy medicine. And this is where I started teaching as well. So I've been teaching. I have an online school and also in-person school where I train people how to be holistic quantum healers, because I believe that practitioners of the future are those that are going to be well versed in medicine and also in energy medicine. So the big thing came to me, and it was viruses. I wanted to know, why was it that, for example, a person would come in with Epstein-Barr virus, and let's say they would be treated by their practitioner, or I would put them on specific herbs to eliminate it. A year later, Epstein-Barr would reappear. And I was like, this is very strange. Why is it that it's always reappearing? So at that time, Alejandro came into my life, and we decided to create a system first that was based on medical things. I wanted to know, why was it that the viruses were coming back, right? And these are part of chronic fatigue viruses. And what was the interesting thing for this particular case is viruses, or any kind of, let's just say, parasites, bacteria. I'm going to give you an example. They create an imprint in the human energy field, right? Because we all have this auric toroidal field around us. It's filled with information. Light is also part of that. So we're electromagnetic beings that are emitting lights, photon beings. Well, anyway, what we pinpointed this particular thing to is that it was imprinted in the field of this particular person based on something that happened to her when she was 2 years old. It was an event that occurred in her life, and there were emotions that were triggered. So it was a decision. As a little girl, she made a decision, very unconscious decision, that this is how it's going to be imprinted in her field of information, because we're all information receivers and emitters. So when we pinpointed the issue and we figured out what it was, I said, okay, so now that you know what it is, perhaps you can work with a practitioner, or you can work with us on regressing yourself to that point in order to release this emotion, to face the situation that you've encountered. So of course, this has helped this person a lot. For some people, it's as easy as regressing, and of course, it's important to address the physical body as well in order to release the situation. Or sometimes it takes work because the event could be extremely traumatic and the person might not be ready to deal with it. So that's how it started. But then we realized, so if there's imprints that happen based on the emotions and physical things, why don't we start testing ourselves and our loved ones and see what happens based on the scale of consciousness? So we've developed a system using scalar wave technology. I know that other practitioners have used kinesiology. I don't have anything against kinesiology, but in my practice, I don't find it extremely accurate, because when we're testing emotions or people and wanting to find out information, because oftentimes it can be influenced. So we wanted to take ourselves out of that system and read strictly what is, without necessarily knowing, right, who we're reading or how it's done. And it's done in a double-blind way, because it takes two people to do it. And we found this information extremely accurate. So Alejandra and I started diving into our own lives and into our family members and friends, and people will say, wow, this is remarkable. It's giving me so much insight into myself. And it gives you a lot of insight into yourself. People say, why do you care to read vibrational frequencies of yourself or other people? So for yourself, I would say it gives you, it's sort of like if you go to a physician, for those people that do go and get blood work done, and they tell you, okay, your cholesterol is this, your glucose level is this. So I say it's the same thing. There's no needles involved. All you're doing is testing yourself to see where you are today. And it gives you, for those of us that are curious and want to evolve, or perhaps have a blind spot, because we all have blind spots, right? Somewhere. Where is my weakness? And perhaps how can I turn that weakness into my strength? So this is exactly what the vibrational frequency analysis does, is now we look at over 30 categories, probably a little more, to see how do we perceive different aspects of our life. And reading other people, so we're talking now about personal vibration analysis and also public things, not just people, but I will say books, films, sacred sites. It opened our world with Alejandro into what I've always imagined as a child. It gave us more clarity, but it also opened the world through the lens of magic. And I say magic in a beautiful way, because you begin to appreciate everything that exists and how divinely orchestrated everything is in our universe. Nothing happens for no reason, right? So sometimes people say, why is it that some people suffer, some struggle? And our biggest message is everything is divinely guided and orchestrated. And it really is about reminding ourselves and people that do care to know this information, that ultimately we hold the key to that transformation we're seeking. We hold the key into understanding the nature of our reality through our own intuition. And this allows people, I would say, in the vibrational revelations community, it gives an opportunity for people to check in with themselves. Are you truly feeling aligned with something because it's intuitively right, or is it because you have a limiting belief system and this is how you are perceiving that reality through that particular filter? So it gives you an opportunity to look at your reality, yourself, people around you, I would say, with much more appreciation and also compassion for yourself. So when you have the compassion for yourself, you'll be able to have much more compassion for the world. And ultimately, this is why we're here, to experience that, to experience more compassion, more joy, more love, and recognize how we're all connected. I hope I gave you enough of an explanation.
No. So, just to say it again, there's this one part where you're revealing public figures, sites, books, spiritual teachers, species, planets, nations, and so on. And religions, it's getting more and more and more and more clarity. And on the other side, you're working with individuals where you can do the personal revelation of your vibration, your frequency, where you're vibrating at how you are experiencing reality and as well the lifetime, so that you can see at your or look at yourself. Where did I start? How did I experience life as a child in a young age? And where were drops and where were shifts happening? And this scale you're using goes from or ranges from 0 to 1000. And there's, due to your experience within individuals and my personal experience, there's this one important threshold, which is called, or the 200s. And there's one term that is given overcoming this level of consciousness, and that's called the hero's journey. Could you say something about it, how it can
Yes.
be understood, how
Yes.
can experiences perceive it, and as well, how can it be misunderstood?
That's beautiful. Well, we realized reading thousands of people by now, most human beings are born below the frequency of 200. I would say between 50 and 100 range, 100 frequency at birth being the most common. So that is a very important number to keep in mind, that 100 is worry and fear. So you can imagine that most humanity is born at this frequency, or let's say older generations, because we've done an episode on brand new generation that's coming. They're drastically different. So that's number one, is understanding the human condition. But what humanity is capable of is so beautiful. And this is the part that we fall in love with every time we do this, with every human being. And it's that frequency of 200. And it's a frequency of heroism. And this is why we call it the hero's journey, because most human beings that truly invest into getting to know who they are tend to reach this point and go beyond it. So what is the 200 frequency? So we've divided the scale into 4 major aspects. The aspect number 1 is the aspect of victimization. And this is on a scale from 0 to 100 to 200, or 199, 0 to 199, victimization. 200 is the first point of what we call the activation part, and it goes all the way until 499. So this is where you're awakened to the realization, wow, that bridge of 200 that you're talking about is the bridge of recognizing that we're all connected. And once you recognize that we're all connected, that we're not victims of our reality, but we actually can make the difference in how we perceive our reality and how we co-create our reality. And then the next stage, I'll just break it down into 4 stages, is 500 to 699. And it is the range of, it is a creative range. Hold on, it's just slipped my mind. It's a range of inspiration. I call it the range of inspiration because it's being creative, right? It's all about feeling inspired. And then 700 to 1,000, I would say, or to 999 is the illumination. And we took out some of the terms that we used earlier. For example, and it is because we've talked to so many people and we've recognized it. Why did we take out the term love out of our scale as an example? And we replaced it with flow, because love can be experienced at every single stage. Why is that we took out enlightenment? Because we also recognize that people that overcome, as an example, a frequency of 50 or 100 or 30 and go into the frequency of 200 and higher, a lot of times people will say to us, I feel enlightened. I've experienced enlightenment. And this is one of the most important terms to also touch upon, because enlightenment is not a destination. Oftentimes you probably have heard spiritual teachers say, oh, so-and-so reached this point of enlightenment. The one biggest misconceptions that we wanted to clear up with Alejandro is enlightenment is the path. It's the journey. And it's something that we can experience throughout every frequency in our life. Illumination is more of what we refer to that, or also the divine essence of 1,000. It's a fully embodied being where there is absolutely no resistance and the information just flows. And we just redid our scale. So for those people that will want to see it, you'll see it's actually the nesting dolls, the Russian nesting dolls. And you'll see the smallest doll in there, the golden light is the frequency of 1,000. And it's a reminder that we all carry this divine essence in all of us. It is the divine spark. It is the God that exists within each being, each sentient beings in this planet. So it doesn't matter if you're on the victimization or activation or illumination, that part is still within you. So it's all about removing our limiting beliefs, walking that hero's journey to recognize the divine that is you.
On this way of the hero's journey, you're shifting consciousness or levels of consciousness. Can be really challenging situations on the way. Is there something that you could share or offer what helps overcoming these challenging situations? And how can it change due to the levels of consciousness one is vibrating at? So something that helps shift from 100 to 200 can be an important tool there, but not work out anymore later on. Like if you're going to 310 or 350 and keep on going, that can be as well difficult to let go, letting go of this tool, this practice, this teaching, these books, and to open or release that and to be open for something else that's coming. So is there something that you can share?
Yes. And I will say it's everything is based on each individual. There is no one tool for all. And I will say this, if you think of your life as a journey, let's say you're your child, or you, or perhaps you're an adult now, and you've gone through your life, and you look back how you were when you were 6 years old, 7 years old, the teachers that you've had in your life, and where you are today. And every one of us knows, of course, we've had different teachers. So your kindergarten teacher will not be the same teacher that you had in high school or when you went to a university, for those of you that have gone. So it also shows that there are different teachers, different books that will appear in our life. The one thing, one of the biggest advices I can give is to always stay curious, because curiosity sparks imagination. It sort of works with your imagination together. I think it's important to go back and remind yourself to be playful, to be compassionate for your journey, not to judge yourself, because what happened you cannot change, but you can change your response to whatever it was that you can say that had made you feel that way. Yes, and for some people it could be extremely traumatic events. Of course, there's people that have gone through Holocaust, right? And you can see that this perpetual trauma has, in a lot of research now, right, has actually imprinted into the third generation's DNA. It actually shifts and changes our DNA. So when you recognize, there's a lot of research on that, that things that had happened to our ancestors, yes, you're not responsible for it, but it's important that you acknowledge it. And in order to transform it, you have to have the compassion to perhaps why people respond in a certain way, why certain people have and respond to trauma. So number one is to recognize, yes, this happened to me, and shift our response by having compassion. Compassion. Imagination, I think, is key. And recognizing the beauty, the simple beauty. For me, beauty is important because I see beauty. If I go outside with my son on a walk, we see a flower, to me, it's beautiful. It inspires me. And that flower carries a message because it's also a vibration of information and light. So just stopping yourself and doing the daily practice of noticing the high vibrational things around you in your life, because universe is bringing it to us as gifts. Nature is giving us gifts, whether you or not you have a dog or a cat, which is also beauty and love, or it's plants or it's garden, or you're looking at the tree. Give yourself permission to soak that energy in. And I think that ultimately focusing on daily basis on things that bring us joy. So it's sometimes it's very comfortable and it's a known territory to bathe in victimization. And this is usually what we've noticed is with many people that have gone through trauma but shifted on the other side, they always say that that trauma is comfortable, even though it's lower vibrational frequency, but it's a known territory. So it tends to expand. So when you kind of look from a higher perspective into that situation, and you're able to see, is this situation working for me? Is it working for me how I am responding to my life? Or is it not? And I will say it goes that way for every frequency. And ultimately, the goal for all of us here is to experience more joy and to have fun. We're here to just have fun. And that is one of the things that we measure. How much fun are we having playing our role? And how much joy, is it joyful? So if you're not having fun, switch, something is not working.
Yeah, this is with these changes in level of consciousness or stages in your life, something you've been totally addressed to and did with compassion and into the other, and suddenly it's not there anymore, doesn't feel true anymore. And then you have to find something else, or something is focusing, tending to something very different. Did you experience something like that? That
Yes, I think every human being experiences something like that. I think we're pushed on regular basis to be uncomfortable, to kind of recognize what is working and what is not working in our life. And it can be scary at times. and challenging. I mean, I've immigrated to the United States as a teenager with my parents. We had, when we left, it was still 1989, Soviet Union. We left with 2 suitcases, $150 a person, nothing else. We were not citizens of any country because at that time our passports and documents were revoked. So we've experienced absolute poverty, with also not knowing what to eat. We ate canned food for a couple of months, actually, when we were, I never shared this with you, in Austria and Italy, we were refugees. So knowing what that feels like, it makes you also appreciate life, and not knowing what the future brings. But I think ultimately, when you have your tight circle, even if it's just that one person, in my case, I was fortunate because my mom and dad and my sister, she was much younger, but we were in that very loving circle. That's all we had was love, which is the most important ingredient. And that is what fuels you. So for those of you that, if you do have one friend or one family member and they're having that safe container of love for you, that's all you need. And you'll survive on very little. This is something that we recognized. Coming to US for me was also not speaking English. That was hard to overcome, being bullied, coming as a teenager to the United States, going to work right away. I went to work. My parents couldn't afford to buy me clothes, so I had to buy my own things. So I knew what that felt like. It built strong character for me. Also experienced a lot of discrimination, not just growing up, but also the contrast of coming to US and what that felt like, being an outsider and being bullied. So I could have stayed there and bathed in the negativity, but somehow, again, it's our response, right, of what we're trained, how we're trained to experience things. And for me, it was the strength, again, that my root was extremely strong as far as what my parents were able to provide for me. So I knew that, okay, well, the contrast is, there's bullying and then there's love. And so for me, love was the response back. It wasn't the bullying. Yeah, I think it happens often. And then we get projections from people, going in the public eye. I can share with you the work that we do. I actually resisted it for the longest time. I didn't want to go public with our work because it comes with sometimes with misinterpretations, projections. But overall, I would say we've built a beautiful community of people who are open-minded to question things, and again, also knowing not to attach. So this is one of the biggest things this work has taught me, is not to attach to necessarily stories of what the news or alternative news is projecting. We're just interested in the data, and we're the explorers of the data because we're curious to know the truth. And again, truth could be different for different people. This is something we've also realized. My truth could be different than your truth, but we're ultimately interested in the ultimate truth. So yes, challenges appear all the time in life, but it's how we take it. And I've learned to take many things with grace, reminding ourselves to be in that space. And also boundaries. I had to learn boundaries. That's a big one. Yes.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Mm.
Just need to breathe a little hearing your story.
Mm-hmm.
Touch with it. That's incredible.
When we were in Italy, I can share with you, we had to share, my grandmother, my sister, and I shared a tiny, tiny room, but we actually shared this house with other refugees. And my parents, actually, it was summer, July through August. It was a small village outside of Rome. My parents found a mattress from the garbage. They slept on that mattress on the rooftop of the solarium for 2 months. It didn't rain one day. We were eating canned food. We were happy. We had nothing, literally nothing. And the day that we got our tickets and permission to enter US, it rained that night. But for 2 months, it didn't rain. So my parents slept on on the mattress on the rooftop. It's crazy stories. I have so many stories I can share. But yes, it's the way that we take challenges. You know, it actually reminds me of a book that I absolutely love. It's a great book to how we can frame our mind. And ultimately, I think some people are born to see things as beautiful, um, or see the best in situations. And that is perhaps what makes some people survive. And those, of course, that are not given those tools. But I believe ultimately we're capable of shifting. And the book is by Viktor Frankl. I don't know if you've ever read his book. Have you ever read it?
No, I didn't.
Okay. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. It's one of my favorite books. He was in Auschwitz and he was a physician. His whole family was killed. He stayed in the concentration camp and he was taking mental notes because he couldn't write down of what was it that made some people survive horrible situations and what was it that made some people live. And he was one of those people that I would say had a positive spin on things, right? For example, some of the people that were in the camp with him would say, oh, uh, we're I'm going to die. If this doesn't happen, I'm going to die by May 25th. And they died that day. So again, it shows how powerful our mind is. And I think that book, perhaps for those people that have never read it, can inspire. How can we retrain our mind if it's not a natural coping mechanism for you, to adapt to how we deal with situations? Because it is ultimately translating. Why is it translating into frequencies? Because everything is a vibration, including ourselves, right? Everything that we see in the universe or perceive is a vibration. And that vibration is translated through emotions. Our thoughts have vibrations. So it is how we shape our thoughts and how we interpret our thoughts. And this is something that if we're training that muscle enough, we can be really good at how we interpret the information and how we perceive it and how we respond to it. It's like people who are, in US, I know Europe is a little different. There's so many people go to the gym, right? There's like gym rats. And I also think it's because most people, drive cars here, they sit at home. It's not a lifestyle to where people walk, right? Like in major European cities. So people go to the gym. So imagine if you're spending so much time at the gym, even if it's just 30 minutes a day, every day, imagine if you were to spend that amount of time on working out your muscle, internal muscle of retraining. How do I perceive myself? How do I perceive the world? And reframing and shaping that. Your life is going to be so much more fun.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Mm.
There was one question coming up shortly before we started the interview. And that was something that I am reflecting, or I am always trying to reflect with all the shifts in consciousness and how we experience our reality, how we experience the world or situation. Did the experience of my I, the spiritual I, ever change? And if yes, what changed? And that's what I try to reflect throughout all the lifetime with the frequencies that I know due to your reading. How did I experience myself, the inner self, really the I that I'm in contact? Did that ever change? Or did it, the quality of the flow or the quality of the light or the power change? So like
Mm.
if you take the picture of the flame did not change, it is there all the time, but the light that it radiates, that did change, that does change. That's how I.
It's beautiful. It actually goes back. I want to pull out my big doll and show it to you. And I might in a minute, but I is always there. It's consciousness.
Yeah.
Consciousness is. It's more of how close we're in that flow, right? Consciousness, it's sort of like the fabric of everything that is. It is. So when you remove the limiting perceptions, limiting beliefs, right? Based on whatever patterns we've inherited through our upbringing, ancestral things. You shed all these layers. Then you get closer to seeing that light and recognizing that it's in you being expressed. Alejandro says it so beautifully. He says it this way, that I am God experiencing life through Esther. I am God looking through the eyes of Esther. I'm God touching through the fingers of Esther. I love that he says that. And it is so true. Because when you recognize that, you're going to see the world as divine. And something that Bruce Lipton also says, he says, we are living on heaven and earth, but you have to recognize it. And this is why I said one of my favorite exercises is to go on a walk every day and begin to notice the heaven that is here for us to enjoy. And by heaven, I mean the grass, the trees, the sky, the flowers, everything that is. And that also means other human beings, recognizing them as the divine. So I'm going to pull up this doll. You see, I just got this doll recently. It's giant. I didn't know it was actually this big. It's quite big, right? Because when we were creating our chart, I said, this is what it is. So this is what you've experienced, let's say at birth, right? You came with all these things. And then as life goes on and you are open to who you are, right? You're shedding the layers, more of these layers, right? There's actually many dolls. This is like the doll, there's like 10 of them. So you see, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Now you want to know what divine feels like. Where's that divine light? They're so bright. Let's find it. It's still going, right? So this divine light, it's still not it. You think this is it. It's not it. Right here. Right there. This is what we come here with. But this is the part that it always exists within. It's a divine spark. So you can connect to it and radiate it as bright as you want it to be. It's sort of like the 24 karat pure gold, right? Another thing somebody years ago said to me when I had a full-time in-person practice, she said, I know, Elena, what you do. I said, what do I do? She said, you are, how did she call it? She said, like a light worker, but she actually used another term. She said, what you did to me is you've turned my light on, almost like you remembered to plug me into the wall, right? Another way I like to think of it is this way. In life, our light can be dimmed by fabric that is covering it. When you remove that fabric, the light is so bright and it's so beautiful. So I want people to remember this little itty bitty, but it's powerful because it's pure. In fact, I think I was reading somewhere a long time ago about Earth, that if we were to take this empty space, which is not empty, but if we were to take it out and collapse it, our planet Earth into like a little cube, like how much would it weigh? And I remember it was like some tiny amount. And I thought, wow, if you really think of what matter is, which is all vibration, right? But this is also who we are at the very core, whether you are at 50 frequency, 20 frequency, or 1,000. It's just those that are at a higher frequency are able to, they've trained themselves to perceive this. This is their life's mission. And for those of us who are not clear in it, but I want everyone to be clear, you still have it. It's in you. So you just have to shed all these other layers. I love this doll. When I ordered it on Amazon and it came, and I said to my son, oh, no, this is the wrong doll. And my son looked at it. He said, Mom, this is a perfect doll. I'm like, but she's so huge. He's like, yeah, but this is how we are, And I thought, he's so right. He's like, just hold her. You're going to fall in love with her. And I did.
I love the comparison. This huge doll and the tiny little one, because it shows represents a way, and the huge layers you have to let go of. The
Yes. Yes. To get to the true treasure, the essence of who we are, the consciousness that we seek, the highest vibration that we seek is already here. Yes.
That's beautiful.
Mm.
There's just one last question where or what you just said represented our way, because we found this major shift beginning of this year, 2022, and we've been diving deep into the rabbit hole and found things there that were keys for us, that were important for us, and that were important to realize things, to learn things, to see things from a different perspective. And then there was this shift that this was not important anymore, that there was no compassion anymore. And we felt this shift of turning to ourselves again, turning into our own path again, to focus on our own healing again, on that what has to be processed and was not processed before, what was still there. And still, there is this value of the time we have done that, and we have been dealing with these topics that we were all around, and with this great awakening we are in. And how do you, I know it's very individual, of course it's
Mm-hmm.
individual, but what would you say about when is it important, or when can it be helpful to dive in something like that, and when is it not important anymore? So
Are you talking about reading a vibrational frequency to dive into, or
about the rabbit hole?
the rabbit holes? Okay. So here's what I've discovered, and I think Alejandro and I kind of agree on it. We, based on kind of the consensus of our findings, I think it's important to stay curious, and that will take you places, which is fine. But as soon as you encounter whoever gives you the information, wherever it's coming from, whether it's mainstream media or alternative media, if they're creating a split, and here's what I mean by split, it's them versus us. We found the guilty party. We know who they are. So now we can go after them. Again, it's creating a split. And we've seen this so clearly in the last 2.5 years, whether it's political or medically driven. We've had in our community, people would say, oh, my family doesn't want to talk to me because this is my belief system, or vice versa. I don't want to talk to my family because this is their belief system. So ultimately, when you go into this rabbit hole and you find yourself shifting away from people that you love just because you have different points of view, ask yourself, is it contributing to raising the vibrational frequency of human collective? Is it connecting you to recognition that we are all connected? We're not separate. So if somebody on this planet is suffering at the moment due to a decision they made, and perhaps for them it was the right decision at that time, are you going to point your finger and say, you were stupid, or you were whatever it is, right? Labeling that person. Ultimately, does it unite you with that, which is already united? Or is it creating a bigger split? So I would say this: proceed with caution, be curious, and ultimately remember that it's not them against us or us against them, that no matter what happens, we're all one. It's how do you choose to take responsibility for your own actions in your own life and your own perceptions in your own life. And how courageous are you to recognize your own limitations? And by limitations, I mean your own belief systems, and question, where do they come from? That's my answer.
A lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of answers to answer.
I mean, it's interesting because we've been revealing so many things. We've just started the series on religion, and somebody wrote to me, "Oh, that didn't bother me, but I might be really bothered by what you're about to reveal." You see, because it triggers our belief systems, and it can really stir up the pot, and it does.
It does.
It does. So we're not interested in separation. We're interested in reminding people we're all the same. We just come from different backgrounds, but we're all the same organism, and that's human.
It's like when Marcus and I talk about things like that and something stirs up the pot in our own system, we know, oh, there's work to do.
Uh-huh.
Welcoming the resistance and seeing, okay, there's separation or something wants to separate. And there's something that has to be processed in the own system to really look at the own system. Where does the ego, the fear-based ego, wants to separate to feel safe,
Yes.
to understand these mechanisms.
And sometimes you'll see people are not ready sometimes for that information, and we can't force another person to have the same point of view as we do. So again, it's about honoring another human being. It's about disagreeing, agreeing to disagree, but be kind, compassionate, and respectful.
Wonderful. There's
Mm-hmm.
that you want to share it last, or there's the invitation for you to share how you are perceiving your existence in this human lifetime now. How do you, yeah, perceive?
Yeah, interesting. I never thought about it because I think every day, we're in our roles, right? So ultimately, I feel I'm walking my divine path so that I'm perceiving with a lot of clarity. Sometimes it can be painful, and it's joyous. My human experience. It's humbling and loving. And I love being a mom. That's the human part. I have 4 kids. They're older. That's probably one of my favorite experiences on this planet is being a parent. Mm,
Oh, what
yeah.
has painful? What are you doing? What
What is painful?
oh,
Oh
it's
gosh.
painful? What is there then?
Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes, you even though I love so much what I do and I believe in it, I don't know if you were there. We had a massive thing that just happened on Tuesday in our life. Anyway, that was very uncomfortable and painful when people project their own belief systems onto you, thinking this is what you say and this is what you do, and when actually it's not. And the big realization that I think no matter how much you love, for me, people are not always going to see the love. Because they're coming from their own traumatic pain experience, and that is what the projections are. And then it makes you stop and question. The other day I stopped and I said, I know I'm meant to do this, but I don't know if I want to do this. And one of the close people to me said, you have to do it. It's important what you do. People need it. So that could be painful. Sometimes my ego wants me to stop doing it, but my soul is driving me. So I'm trusting the soul, but the ego wants to stop because my nature is to hide, not want to be seen. But I've put myself out there, and it's not easy. That's the pain. The ego wants to hide. Like, no, no, no. I just want to be in a cave. I would be good in a cave with like a huge library of books, which I love to read. So that would be, and with my kids and Alejandro, and that would be it, But then putting myself out there, like I'm a Pisces, Cancerizing Cancer moon. I love to be in my monk kind of like cave like place and caretaker. So to be out in the public is painful. It can be painful. Uh, so it's the battle of the ego and the soul. Yes.
Thank you. Truth.
You're welcome. So my message to people: be kind, compassionate, and loving always. We need more of that.